than I think we would have got there. Thanks so much. We could have done a half day on just this, I think. We're going to go right into the next. Jim, thanks so much. Yeah, I'll talk to you later, Jim. We're going to go right into the next session since we're running a little bit behind, and it's really a great honor to have Jessica James Golden with us again this year. She knows rural communities inside and out. We're going to hear a lot about what the NTCA is doing now with smart rural communities. Just tell you a real quick little bit about Jessica. Jessica leads NTCA's first targeted outreach initiative to develop strategic relationships with national organizations in education, healthcare, public safety, small business, and agriculture. Groups like John Deere, we've heard earlier about precision farming, Discovery Education, American Farm Bureau Federation, Veterans Affairs Office of Rural Health, any group whose constituents recognize the importance of broadband in rural areas. Please give me a warm welcome for Jessica James Golden.
Thank you guys so much. It's such an honor to be back here again, and I have to say, sitting through all these sessions, I feel like I have learned so much, and it's great to see so many great folks talking about rural New York and rural America, because that's not often the case when we're coming to some of these events. As David said, my name is Jessica Golden. I'm with NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association. I apologize in advance. I have to zip through these slides. My flight does board at 4:30, so I'm going to rush through and hopefully it doesn't compromise my presentation at all. So quickly, NTCA is a national trade association. We represent about 900 small rural telephone cooperative and commercial telecommunications companies throughout the United States. Our members provide broadband voice and data service to some of the hardest to reach rural communities of our country. Our members, just to give you an idea of how rural, serve about 5% of the nation's population, over 40% of the landmass. So here's a quick map of NTCA, followed by our New York membership. NTCA has about 22 members across the state of New York, again, serving some of the hardest to reach rural communities. So today I wanted to briefly kind of go over some of the challenges faced by rural advocates. We've talked a lot today about the network infrastructure, access challenges, but from a Washington, D.C., and even just a legislative outlook, rural faces a lot of challenges in getting the message across about why rural is important, why rural is important to fight for. And I want to say how impressed I am by the conversation about rural that I've heard from this room, because that's not often the case. So rural has many faces. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about rural, but we hear everything from Honey Boo Boo to Pleasantville about rural America, right? So it's not easy being green. I'd like to say it's also not easy being rural. There are a lot of misconceptions about rural America. Again, we've got Honey Boo Boo, we've got the Beverly Hillbillies, a lot of popular in terms of society perceptions of what rural can be. And I'd like to argue there's a big disconnect that goes on between our urban and rural communities. This is an article titled from The Edge of the American Farm. Most Americans could care less if farming and ranching were to disappear, so long as they get their burger and fries. So I'd like to challenge you all today. If you were to go into an urban or suburban area and ask a child or even an adult where their food comes from, who thinks that they would say a farm or a ranch? How about a grocery store? I bet they'd say, oh, Whole Foods down the street, or Ralph's. It's a reality. And I'd like to say this is a reality that we need to be aware of. We are also at a historic low of members of Congress from rural America. Why does this matter? Well, the policymakers in DC and Albany make the decisions that affect all of us, right? And if rural residents aren't fighting for rural or making sure rural is on the agenda, who will? So again, we've got that it's your fault for living there mentality. A lot of folks are saying, well, you live there, why don't you just move? As if that's the option or the solution. We've got a disconnect culturally, and there's been a lot of regulatory uncertainty for our rural communities. So rural relevance. What we talk a lot about at NTCA is the fact that, as Secretary Vilsack of the Department of Agriculture talks a lot about, 40% of our military comes from rural America. So much of our food, our natural resources. I know Jessica Zuffolo mentioned this morning about New York's incredible dairy industry, wine and spirits. I mean, what would we do? I don't know what I would do without cheese, personally. I'm a big cheese fan. So, without rural America, we wouldn't have cheese. That's how I see it. Manufacturing, our urban escapes. I know there are a lot of second homes in the rural areas of New York. So it's, again, emphasizing this urban-rural interdependence. It's not just one way or the other. It's an interdependence. We need one to have the existence of the other. There was a survey done about the urban-rural economic connection back in 2009, about the economic impact of rural telecommunications on urban and rural communities. And it actually came out that a majority of the economic impact of rural telecommunications was on urban areas because of the manufacturing jobs, the software engineers, the transportation involved in it. So again, it's emphasizing this urban-rural interconnection. So back in 2012, NTCA hosted a summit called the Smart Rural Community Summit. And we brought together about 50 national organizations. We had folks from USDA, HHS, we had folks from American Farm Bureau Federation, John Deere, American Telemedicine Association, American Library Association, anyone whose members rely upon or appreciate the importance of broadband in a rural community. We released a white paper that defined the subject. We really just wanted to get a conversation going. Because how often is it in advocacy that we are talking about one thing in one room and the exact same conversation is going on in another room and we have no idea? And it's not until one person says, oh, hey, no, John is in economic development and he is on the other side of town, you should talk to him. And that happens on local levels as well. We have members who work right next door at their local electric companies, but there might be some tension between the two, so they don't always talk. So we're working at NTCA on breaking down these silos on a national level and on a local level. So Smart Rural Community, what is it? Again, briefly, I'll run through this. Hopefully it's not garbled. A Smart Rural Community invokes broadband-enabled, intelligent networks to support innovative applications for education, healthcare, public safety, agriculture, small business, all themes that we've heard throughout today. But the most important thing, at least how I see it, is that a smart rural community is not just about the broadband connection. A smart rural community is nothing without it embracing the teams of the collaborative leaders that are standing behind and promoting the technology on a local level, right? From the manufacturers to the application developers to the telecommunications providers, and ultimately the users who adopt and employ the technology. A smart rural community is a team effort of continuing development and evolution. So again, vitality of any community is dependent on access to quality health care, education, so on and so forth. Rural communities in particular face unique challenges. Thus, broadband is just that much more important to our rural communities. I mean, I've had so many conversations about the importance of telemedicine, how our rural communities in particular have aging populations, and to be able to give folks the opportunity to age in place. I mean, how neat is that? That takes off, I mean, that's an economic freedom there. I mean, it costs so much money to be able to live in a nursing facility. But the idea that you could have the option of staying in your home and aging in place for a few years could save a family hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Again, 40% of our nation's military is from rural America. Where are they going to want to move back to? A lot of folks are coming back from overseas. They want to be able to move back home, but if they can't be guaranteed a quality of life, again, that's through telemedicine. I know the VA is looking into a lot of telepsychiatry, because one of the worst things you can do, and this was told by someone from the VA, for a veteran is to put them in a car in the middle of rush hour traffic, because they are in a confined space, they're being come at from all sides, it's very, very stressful. And so to be able to give a veteran an option of staying in their home and receiving care is incredible. So post the summit, we've had a lot of discussions. We had a summit on broadband adoption a few years ago, and we had another one this year, because again, we realized that without the community actually adopting the technology, it means nothing. So I know a lot of folks here are from the library world. Broadband adoption is huge. We work with the American Library Association on continuing the discussion of broadband adoption. I know Debbie Berlin is in the room somewhere for Project Getting Older Adults Online. We've got a couple of other advocates here. I think continuing these conversations and bringing these groups together is essential to moving forward and making sure we're all on the same page. So what we realized about this initiative was that we couldn't do this alone. Our idea was that we could create a pilot smart rural community. So on an advocacy level, we could showcase the potential, right? We could say, you know what, rural may be seen as backward behind the times, but if given the right opportunities and the right tools, a rural community can go above and beyond, right? There's the potential there. So we were going to create a pilot. But then we had to step back and say, we already have some members who are utilizing their networks to serve their local healthcare facilities, their schools, their libraries, and they're going above and beyond, and they're the perfect example of this. So, first of all, we created an advisory committee. Some of the groups we mentioned before sit on this advisory committee: John Deere, the American Farm Bureau Federation, the American Telemedicine Association, Veterans Affairs Office of Rural Health, and they have been critical minds for us to be able to tap into to best develop this initiative. Other problem, again, we already had members taking part in these SMART initiatives. Some of our members actually, and you know, this is a lot of Midwestern mentality. They will freely admit to this. They do not like bragging about themselves or about their initiatives. And so we broke this Smart Rural Community thing into two phases: showcasing and then the pilot. But to showcase, you have to have people actually apply to be showcased, right? So that's still a struggle for us, but we're expecting many more applications this year. But what happened last year is that we actually had about 24 applications we received. And again, we have a membership of 900. So receiving 24 was actually pretty impressive for us. We ended up selecting I'm trying to zip through these without breaking down on the process. We selected 7 winners from 4 different states: Kansas, Minnesota, Florida, and North Dakota. And how are the winners selected? This is what a lot of people ask us. You know, with our definition of smart rural communities, what did we use to review these applications? Well, the use of broadband in meeting the needs of major industries, including commercial, government, and not-for-profit. The recruitment, retention, and expansion of commercial, government, and not-for-profit. Economic and societal impacts, efforts for the future. And the last one is collaboration with local entities, which was huge to the definition of a smart rural community. And at least to me, listening to all of your discussions today, I felt like a lot of these issues and these components were discussed today in creating smarter, more sustainable rural communities. So I had a video I was going to show today, but I'm going to skip through that. But if you have a chance to look this up online, West Central Telephone, based out of Sebeka, Minnesota, did a great 2-minute video kind of going over how they are connected within their community, working with their entities, and defining a smart rural community. So we do plan to create a pilot community down the line. We've had so much success now in highlighting these showcase communities, though, that we've kind of gotten wrapped up in that, and we've gotten so much great feedback from our members. Because ultimately, what we want to be able to do is to create toolkits that other people can follow. You know, every community is different. Every face of every community is different and has unique challenges. But if we can provide toolkits and steps for other folks to be able to follow down the line, how did you reach out to your library? What were the questions you needed to ask your local school to make sure that they were being served in the way they needed to be served? Was the issue that they didn't have the access to the service, or was it they couldn't afford it? And was there anything else you could do along the way to make sure they were being served in the way they needed to be served? Same goes for local healthcare facilities. So a network of ideas. We want to create an alumni network that folks can tap into to showcase what they've done. So just briefly, what some of our 7 winners have done since winning the award. So there was no financial incentive to apply for this award. I talked to one of our North Dakota members before the winners were announced, and she said, listen, we don't need money to apply for this. We just want to be put on the map. We want folks to know we exist, that we are a great place to live, work, and play. This national recognition could bring a lot to our small rural community. Because a lot of our members are in areas that are economically challenged. I spoke to one of my other members who's based out of the area of Kentucky with the highest unemployment rate right now. They're up against a lot of challenges. So how you can use something positive to display your community. That you're saying, despite all these challenges, we are still going above and beyond. We are being innovative, we are being forward-thinking, and we are rural. So what the winners did receive were road signs. Every winner received 2 road signs. So now anyone going into their community, the first thing they see is that this is a smart rural community. And this may not seem like a lot for the major metropolitan areas, but for a smaller rural community, this can be a lot. A lot of events have been held with policymakers. This is Senator Klobuchar of Minnesota. She came and toured one of their facilities. She spent an entire day. She received a Rural is Cool t-shirt. I have my Rural is Cool wristbands on right now if anyone wants some. But this has continually happened. We've had letters written from policymakers, letters to the editor. It's been a great way, again, for our members to be able to showcase what they've done. And it's not in a way that they feel like they're bragging. It's in a way that they're showcasing their actual hard work and dedication to their community. There have been, let me just check on the time, sorry. There have been summits hosted by our members. There was one in Home, Kansas, hosted by our member Blue Valley Telecommunications. They called us up one day and say, hey, we want to do an event in conjunction with Kansas State University on the role of broadband in agriculture. And I can't tell you how many cool things I learned that day, because there are so many technologies emerging in the world of broadband. You know, we have more and more mouths to feed every day as a nation. And the only way we can stay on top of feeding those mouths is by making our food sourcing more efficient. There was an article in the New York Times the other day, I'm not sure if you all read it, on self-milking cows, on dairy farms being equipped with technology, that a cow, when it's ready to be milked, can go up to the little gate, and the lasers attach the sucklers onto it, and it gets milked. And the cows are so happy, because a cow, obviously, when it's not been milked, is not in a very comfortable place. Dairy farming is a 24 hours a day industry. It's one of the most labor-intensive agricultural industries. So the idea that a farmer could actually have a life is pretty impressive. So there's a lot going on in the ag world, everything from GPS precision agriculture, to be able to make sure you lay every single one of those seeds in the right place, directly, inches away from the other line. Again, enabled by GPS, broadband enabled. I mean, it's incredible to see what's happening. John Deere did a field trip to the farm for us the other day. We were able to go and see what PCIA arranged. I don't know if Jonathan's still here. But anyway, it was great for us to be able to see what this broadband was enabling. We're hosting an educational broadband summit in Washington, D.C. on June 7th. If anyone's in the area, you're welcome to attend. So events like this, where we're bringing groups of people together who wouldn't traditionally be speaking together. Folks in economic development, agriculture, public safety, education, healthcare, small business, anyone who recognizes the importance of a broadband connection in a rural community. We should all be talking. Because again, we recognize that it's a community effort. It's not just the telco, it's not just the healthcare facility, it's not just the economic development office, it's a community effort. Again, hosting more events. Secretary Vilsack talked about the idea of rural relevance back in 2012. A lot of folks took it personally. We took it as a call to action. Start talking about why rural is relevant, why rural matters. Again, we have a Rural is Cool campaign. And as kitschy as it might sound, has actually been really successful. We've invited all of our members to tweet, Facebook, and use social media to talk about why rural is relevant, why rural is cool. Maybe it's a beautiful picture of a sunset over a farm. Maybe it's being out on the water in your boat in rural Minnesota. But it's really just to get the conversation going. You can see in the middle, that's Grace. She was with the National Grange, at the National Farm Union over on the other side. So we've had other national organizations involved in this, and that's, for me at least, been the pretty exciting part. Again, food for thought, how can we involve you all more? Please feel free to reach out.